Welcome everyone to this event. My name is Andrea Pisauro. I am the co-director of Europe of Scotland, which is organizing tonight. We are hosting this event on a very special day for Scotland. Happy St. Andrew's Day, everyone. Of course, St. Andrew is the patron saint of Scotland, and legend has it that when King Angus II saw St. Andrew's Cross made by clouds in the Scottish sky. Of course, the Scottish sky is always cloudy, but in that day in 1832, he saw St. Andrew's Cross, and that's where the Scottish flag originated. Of course, the oldest flag in Europe, the oldest national flag in Europe. In fact, St. Andrew, I studied this morning, I didn't know very well, but it's not just the patron saint for Scotland, but also for Ukraine, Russia, Romania, Barbados, and a bunch of places in Italy, which is where I'm from. And in fact, today is also the name day of everyone who is called Andrew. I'm called Andrea, so it's also my name day. And so happy St. Andrew to all, everyone who is called Andrew, Andrea, Andreas, all the different versions across Europe. So just a couple of words about Europe for Scotland. Many of you might know is a pan-European initiative which brings together citizens from across Europe who want to express solidarity with Scotland post-Brexit and make clear that we would very much like for Scotland to have the choice to come back to Europe, to the EU. Of course, as an independent country, if it gets the opportunity to do so, because as we know, the UK government still denies Scotland this chance. And our long-term goal is for European politicians to echo this sentiment, and we will tell a bit more about that later. So today we have a very important event for us because we want to present our new petition. We have launched it just this morning, just today. It's called Would You Like Scotland to Be Part on the Conversation on EU Enlargement? It asks European citizens and MEPs in the next European Parliament to remember Scotland, to consider the clear desire of the Scottish people to rejoin the EU as an independent country, and to keep Scotland part of the conversation on a democratic, open, and fair enlargement. So today we are gonna explain in depth what we ask, why we launch it today, and how we will use it to make sure that the voice of the Scottish citizens is heard loud and clear during the EU election campaign in 2024. We have an amazing panel with us tonight, and I'm going to present it in a minute. I just want to say that we are live on YouTube. In fact, not just on YouTube, but on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, I don't even know what Twitch is, and TikTok of Independence Live. So thanks so much, Independence Live, for hosting us on so many different platforms, and particularly to the producer, Kevin, for allowing this event to happen on such short notice. Thank you, everyone, also to all that have signed the petition so far. There is already 500 of you. Please keep signing. We will try to convince more people to sign tonight. So a very quick overview of the event. So we have about an hour. So we will discuss why this new petition is important, why we ask Scots to sign it, and how each and every one of you can help us build momentum and make sure that the voice of Scottish citizens is heard across Europe during the EU election campaign. To discuss this, I will invite the co-director of the campaign, Nina Jette, and also the leader of our Italian group of activists, Sara De Sanctis, to discuss with them our next step as a campaign. Before doing so, though, I will start by introducing our guests and have a quick welcome to each of them. We will later hear from each of them what they think about this new initiative and in general about the political situation in Scotland and across the UK. And at the end of the event, there is going to be space for questions. So wherever you are following us, in whatever platform, write down a comment drop a message. We want to hear from you. We want to have a collective discussion on how to move forward. And on this, I am very happy to welcome the first guest of our panel tonight, who is Morag Williamson. She's the convener of Yes4You, which is a national non-party aligned grassroots campaign campaigning for independence and EU membership. As we campaign for the EU to welcome Scotland if it becomes independent, and you are campaigning for independence and to join the EU, we have kind of complementary goal. We as a campaign we are not Scots, so we don't take a position on independence per se, but we want the Scots to have a choice, and to welcome them in Europe is our desire. So we really are complementary, Morag, and it's so nice to see you again. We met in Edinburgh, was it a year ago? And we have a very long chat. It was very nice, and so it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us today. And I hear you were a very nice event this morning as well, right?
Yes, thanks for that introduction, Andrea. Yes, I'm convener of Yes4EU. We want independence and EU membership for Scotland. Yeah, there are many events going on this week, actually. So, yeah, the one this morning was held by the European Movement in Scotland, and that's been very successful, touring our star, which is an actual physical object, the big star. Maybe you've seen pictures on social media, and events were held in various cities in Scotland, all about, you know, how Scotland can get back into the EU. And then, you know, there was lots of discussion and good speakers and so on. So, and that was good. I mean, as far as our own activities are concerned, we hold major events like the March and Rally earlier this year in collaboration with Believe in Scotland, and we have regular street stalls, regular, you know, normal campaigning things like street stalls and street actions, and of course we have in-person events and webinars and a lot of work on social media. So yeah, we do all sorts of things, and we keep going. We only started in 2020 after the disastrous UK general election, which meant that Brexit was happening.
Remember that very well. Well, thank you so much, Mara, for being with us today. I'm going to ask you later a bit about what's going on in terms of campaigns and what's the mood in the movement. But now I want to bring in Olaf Stando, who is the international officer of the SNP Youth, and he's also... Can you hear us? Fantastic. Thanks so much for being with us today. Olaf is also an executive member of the SNP Socialist Group and the convener of the SNP in Fife branch. I hope I pronounce it correctly. You were born in Poland, Olaf. Then you grew up in Scotland, but you also lived in Sweden, in England, and briefly in Germany. I really don't want to ask you these questions, but how many languages do you speak? I'm going to feel ashamed, I know. But...
So I speak 5 with a bit of Duolingo here and there as well, but I'd say 5 pretty communicatively.
Wow. Well, I am learning my 3rd on Duolingo.
But it's not to put anyone to shame, right?
No. I am, you know, but I'm trying Duolingo with German, but it's a bit tough. Yeah, I need to do my lesson today. I haven't
difficult language, yeah.
But thanks so much for being here, Olaf. It's really a pleasure to see you. And I want to also welcome our 3rd guest today, who is Lesley Riddoch. You probably all know Lesley. She's a fantastic broadcaster, journalist, author, cyclist, land reform campaigner, and lover of all things Nordic, as she presented herself on her website. Lesley, my plane today was delayed. Sarah's train was delayed, and I hear your car was broken.
Yeah, there's something in the ether. Basically, I was stuck for 5 hours waiting for a car service. But, you know, I've drunk a lot of coffee and eaten a lot of cakes today in cafes in Dunfermline, which was actually a very pleasant thing to do. So, you know, I'm not complaining.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for making it today. It was lovely to see you a couple of weeks ago at the conference in Edinburgh to remember the legacy of Tom Nairn. Maybe we can talk a bit about that later.   , but now it's time to talk about the petition. So I would like to well, I thank you everyone for being here. I'll ask the producer to put you on backstage because I want to welcome Nina Yetter and Sara DeSantis to talk about the petition, and we'll call you back to discuss what you think and what we do with it. So thank you so much, Nina, for joining us. So Nina and I are the co-director of Europe Scotland, have been campaigning together for, 3 years now?
I think it's more like two and a half.
More like 2. Okay, time flies. Post-pandemic time is very difficult to count. So, Nina, I want to ask you the very important question for this event is why this petition? What do we ask, and why now?
Yeah, a lot of questions. First, I wanted to say hi to everyone who's watching us. Thank you so much for spending St. Andrews with us. And yeah, so our petition, the reason why we came up with it, it's kind of like, I guess I want to kind of go back to the beginning. When we launched our campaign, it was really about expressing European solidarity with Scotland. We published an open letter in spring 2021. And this open letter was very warmly received by the Scottish public, we felt. And then, of course, there was the Scottish election where it got renewed, a mandate for both independence and membership in the EU. So we felt we want to continue. So we turned our open letter into a campaign. And very much from the beginning, we felt that we wanted to lobby the EU. So we wanted to, for the EU to prepare to welcome Scotland back. And we recruited a lot of volunteers, amazing people from all over Europe that are helping us in this effort, including people in Brussels that are lobbyists, etc., or like insiders, EU insiders. So we are well positioned to do something. However, I think it is fair to say that time has not been on our side in terms of like world events, also the situation in Scotland, because of course the Scots are planning to have a referendum literally like a month ago, and that did not happen. The Supreme Court denied the Scots a referendum, and then of course there was the global events like the war in Ukraine, now in Gaza. So you cannot quite expect, and I think it's right that the EU has their attention elsewhere. So of course, it's kind of difficult to talk about Brexit, to talk about Scotland, but we've been racking our brains, like when is the right moment? When can we make some noise in Europe? And now next year, the EU elections are coming up, and that's a big deal.
Sorry to interrupt. The first European elections in which obviously the Scottish citizens will not be in the position to vote because of Brexit. And of course, again, an imposition from the rest of the UK, but many people that are following us would have very much liked to vote, I bet.
Yeah, and kind of, I mean, I can also relate to that in a way. I mean, I have been a citizen of the United Kingdom, so-called United Kingdom, for more than a decade. I was not allowed to vote in the Brexit referendum, so like all the other European citizens. So I know what it feels like to have decisions being made that are very much impacting you that you don't have a say in. But yeah, I feel I'm maybe, sorry.
No, I agree. I just want to point out one thing that while you were saying that we could not vote at the Brexit referendum, that was in stark contrast to the Scottish independence referendum, where European citizens were allowed to vote. It was based on residency, and everyone who was in Scotland could vote. I think that's very telling about the different approach in terms of democracy between Scotland and England. But I think one thing that I think it's important to discuss during this event is that the upcoming European elections are very significant because there is a moment in which the EU is really coming together to discuss serious reforms and this important process of enlargement. And I just want to say a couple of words about this, because obviously the EU is a union of 27 member states. It was 28 before the UK left. And it doesn't change for quite a while. of course, when the European Union project started in the 50s, it was just 6 member states. So it has been enlarging over the years, but there has been a long pause. And this long pause was coinciding with Brexit, really. So Brexit was a moment that sucked up energy from everyone in Europe. The EU stop was, there was this very long negotiation. But again, I think now the EU has moved on from Brexit. People in Europe don't talk about Brexit that much. And of course, the war in Ukraine, Putin's invasion, triggered this new mindset in which you understood that it's time to restart the process and start to welcome the country who want to join. And so I think the next European Council in December might give the green light to start negotiations for Ukraine to join. And there is another about 10 countries that are queuing to join. And so, sorry I just want to bring this in the context that the next European elections is going to elect a new parliament that is going to decide on enlargement, and we don't want Scotland to be forgotten in these plans.
I think it's fair to say that it might be the most powerful EU parliament yet that is going to be elected, because there will also be sweeping reforms that want to give more power to the EU parliament. And there's other EU reforms that might take place, like where they have different degrees of closeness within the EU. And so, of course, that is also quite relevant to Scotland, because, of course, we know that there are like different views in Scotland of like what kind of relationship to Europe they want. I think it's fair to say that most Scots don't like Brexit, but some think there should be, you know, like they should join EFTA, others think they should be an associate member of the EU, others want full membership. These are not things that we can have any, well, you know, we don't want to influence anybody's mind here. That is not up to us, which is also kind of why we formulated the petition that we are launching, coming back to that, very vaguely. It's literally just asking, do you want Scotland to be part of the conversation on EU enlargement? So it's not, do you want Scotland to join? Do you want this and this and happen in Europe? It is literally just a very humble ask. And yeah, I think
I think if
that's something that a lot of people want to support. And I guess Sarah could talk a little bit about what would happen if this petition picks up steam.
Yes, I want to bring in Sarah to ask exactly that. But first, I want to ask the producer if he can put up the petition on screen to give a flavor of what the petition asks for those that haven't seen it yet. So obviously, there is this conversation on enlargement that has started in Brussels. And at the moment, it's a conversation among politicians and journalists. But when the European election campaign will start in March, it's going to be a conversation among citizens, among candidates for parliament, among civil society. And we really want people in these debates to also remember Scotland, to remember Scotland decided to join EU. And this petition is something to break the news and to say the Scots are still here campaigning, willing to be part of this conversation. And if you can scroll down a bit, you can maybe see some of the sentences. And yeah, so obviously we focus on the important fact that everyone should remember that Scotland voted to remain and that the Scottish institutions consistently over the years asked to have a very different Brexit than the one that was imposed by the UK government. Of course, we asked to remember that Scotland is one of the most ancient historic country and has been part of the EU for 47 years. And of course, we ask all Scots to come and join this call to really make an impression on the debate and to create a bond, a dialogue between Scottish citizens and European citizens. This is not a petition for politicians. This is a petition to talk between citizens. And on this, I want to bring in Sarah. I don't see you, Sarah, but there you are. Sarah, you are in Rome, which is my home city as well, and I miss it very much sometimes. But thank you for joining us. I want to mention that you are in Rome because I want to remind everyone that there was this beautiful picture of a group of activists in front of the Colosseum with a Scottish flag on the day of the Supreme Court judgment, saying, "We stand with you, Scotland." And you were there. You organized that, didn't you?
I did. And we can talk a bit about this later, but the point was that we only had a week to do this because the Supreme Court let us know that they would release their verdict with only 1 week of time of advance. So it was a tricky thing to pull off. Also, it was about a year ago, just under a year ago. It was really freezing, unlike this year that Novembre has been very kind to us in Rome. It was 20 degrees just this morning. So you can see on the photo that everybody's really, really serious. But still, despite all that, like I think about 30 people pitched up, and they had nothing to gain really. They certainly had better things to do than stand in a freezing cold in front of the Colosseum. But I think it's a good example of the kind of spirit of solidarity that we at Europe for Scotland try to funnel and bring back to our Scottish friends.
And that day we read a statement in 5 different languages from 5 different European capitals. Of course, the one in Rome was in Italian, but we had activists in Brussels, in Berlin, in Paris, and in Dublin. It was a freezing cold, but we would do it again. And Sarah, now with this new petition, what can we do on the ground? Like, if there is a debate with Italian MEPs or wannabe MEPs.
Wannabe, exactly. Well, so the idea is quite simple, is to make use of the fact that at EFS we have a quite widespread network. We're active in 17 European countries. And the idea is that every group of ambassadors in the local country would contact the prospective MEPs. So in my case, I'm the lead Italian ambassador. And so I would go after people running here in Italy. I would contact them and say something like, look, I speak on behalf of X many Scots. In addition to already 15,000 European, we're hoping a lot more in the months to come. And we want to vote for someone who will bring the Scottish question back on the table. Will that be you? And so essentially the point would be to ask them to commit to some kind of action before the election, which is when, of course, voters have the greatest negotiating power. So the point is, as Nina was saying earlier, and you, Andrea, as well, is that Scots no longer have a voice at the European table, and we cannot speak for them. But what we can do is, in a way, kind of lend them the microphone, so to speak. But that is why it's so crucial to have as many signatures as possible, because, the more people we can say that we speak for, quote unquote, the more negotiating power we'll have. I would urge everyone who's watching to sign and commit to getting at least 3 other people to sign, and they should do the same. And the goal ideally would have to be literally anyone in Scotland who wishes to have anything to do with the European project under any term to sign this. You will notice that, the title of our petition isn't the catchiest one necessarily. A few, communication people have told us off for that. But the reason why we chose this and the way we phrased the petition was precisely to be as inclusive as possible. So it's not bring us back full-fledged into the EU, it's not do this, do that. It's just surely everyone can agree about being at least part of the conversation. That, I think, is something that the Scottish people have quite strongly demonstrated already. So no excuses, sign and get other people to sign as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's really about to keep the conversation alive because obviously the EU is gonna draw plans, is gonna make documents, but while the politicians do so, we would like them to have in their mind Scotland. We would like Scotland to be in the minds of politicians and in the hearts of citizens, so that when the time comes, and the time will come when, unfortunately, we need to say this every 5 minutes, but it's true. It's the UK government that is denying the Scottish people a chance to choose their own future. And we also need to keep putting pressure on the UK government to allow democracy, because it's completely undemocratic. Our campaign absolutely contests that a referendum should happen.
It's also very short-sighted by the UK government, because I think, like, they are scared of losing Scotland. And in the end, if Scotland was to rejoin the EU or to have, just to defeat Brexit in one form or another and be an extremely successful country, no one is stopping England, no one is stopping the others from doing the same. And I mean, I live in England, I certainly want that to happen. So I think it's extremely short-sighted that they have this attitude.
And
Absolutely.
sorry, I would just add the fact that the person behind, like the person who came up with this idea for Scotland, is English. So this isn't necessarily an anti-English sentiment at all. This is, again, about democracy and the freedom to choose and express one's democratic will. Really, I
think we can say hi to Anthony Barnett, who is probably watching this, or we watch it later. And Anthony's been a driving force of this campaign, but not only him. There were a lot of English signatories that launched the campaign together with us, including some of the most important historians and political scientists. So there is a lot of people in England that understand that Scotland has the right to choose its own future. Unfortunately, it's the government problem. Now, on this, I want to ask to play a video that we put on the petition page at the bottom, which we think it's quite important to watch again. I think many of you probably have watched it in the past. Many of you know who is the person in the video.
It's already been watched.
It's already been watched, apparently. We need to reload the video.
President, thank you. I represent Scotland within this House, and where I'm proudly Scottish, I'm also proudly European. I want my country to be internationalist, cooperative, ecological, fair, European. And the people of Scotland, along with the people of Northern Ireland and the people of London, and lots of people in Wales and England also, voted to remain within our family of nations. I demand that that status and that esprit européen be respected. But colleagues, there is a lot of things to be negotiated. We will need cool heads and warm hearts. But please remember this: Scotland did not let you down. Please, I beg you, chers collègues, do not let Scotland down now.
Fantastic. I mean, I always like to watch this video because I think that it's an historic moment in the Brexit saga. It was a moment in which the European Parliament was listening to an MEP from Scotland, and there was this standing ovation. The MEPs were standing up and clapping, and it was a very emotional moment. That in a way reflects what we would like to see again. We would like to see a European Union which is assertive in making a clear statement, in thanking Scotland for its stance, for its desire to join the European family of nations and be assertive in doing so. And so that's what we're campaigning for. And we really wish Scottish MEP to stand again in the European Parliament in a few years' time. Time to bring back our guest, because we want to start our debate on the petition. And so if I can ask to bring Morag, Lesley and Olaf back. Fantastic. Welcome back. Sorry to keep you waiting. Well, I want to start with Olaf. You most certainly remember that video, and you are the youngest among us, I believe. So I want to ask you, what is the mood among young people in Scotland on Europe? What do you think of this petition, first of all? And also, what do you think the young people in Scotland think?
Well, look, first of all, just a huge thank you to you, to Sarah, to Nina, to the whole Europe for Scotland team for actually making this happen. I think the timing of that could not be any more important. And I'm sure we'll get on to talking about the petition itself. But look, yesterday, the STV Ipsos poll came out, and amid the gloom and the perception that somewhat the independence movement is dead and buried, we had 54% for yes. And amid those figures, 62% of people under the age of 40 back yes. If you look at the breakdown, that's a huge number. And actually, there's been a steady increase in the amount of young people that backed yes. If you look at the 2014 referendum, the majority of young people backed yes as well, but the very youngest cohort, for example, backed no very narrowly. So there has been a big shift, especially since Brexit. I mean, I was lucky enough to go on Erasmus. I went to Sweden, studied in Stockholm University. I actually met my girlfriend in Sweden as well. And, you know, I lived in lots of different European countries. I was born in Poland. I came to Scotland thanks to being a member of the EU. And I think, you know, it is such a tragedy to be dragged out of Europe. I think more and more people are realizing this. And especially when Labour and the Tories are stuck in this Brexit delusion and are ignoring the elephant in the room, which is the huge Brexit damage, not just economically, but socially as well. We're losing out on so many opportunities. I think it's so important to keep the light on, as Alan Smith said there. Looking back at that video, right, I love that video as well. If you look at the face of Nigel Farage, and if you look at the reaction, sitting there in a corner, isolated, completely lonely and sort of groaning vis-a-vis the standing ovation for Scotland, I think that sums up the situation that we're in. Nigel Farage, possibly the future leader of the Tory party, who knows, is currently in the jungle making a fool of himself, just like Boris Johnson has been making a fool of himself, and just like the UK has been becoming an international pariah, whereas Scotland is keeping this progressive European light on. And I think it's really, really important. Look, we have a lot of work to do. Us young people in the YSI, we've organised the first ever international conference earlier this year in the spring. It was the first ever time that we brought together parties, not just from IFA, which is the political grouping in Europe that we're part of, but also the Social Democrats and the Greens. We had, you know, major parties like the German Social Democrats and Danish Social Democrats. We've had our friends from Wales and Catalonia, as well as other Green parties from the Benelux. And I think that's exactly the sort of thing we need to be doing, appealing directly to Europeans, to people that might be MEPs in the future, people that might be ministers in the future. You know, and this petition is exactly what we need. So honestly, thank you so much. And I can't wait for this campaign to grow and grow and strength.
Fantastic, Olaf. Thank you so much. I want to bring in Morag now. Morag, you were telling us a bit about what you did this morning with this event in Edinburgh. I hear there was also a message from Unsa Yousaf at the event that was very much reinforcing the view that of the Scottish government to rejoin the EU. So what do you think of the petition? What do you think the independence movement in general would think of rejoining the EU?
Well, as far as the petition is concerned, I think it's a fantastic idea, and also your idea of lobbying the candidates in the EU elections. It's fantastic. We will support the petition in our campaigning. As I was saying, you know, we do a lot of campaigning on the street, and we will be seeking signatures for the petition, also on social media. I mean, it gives us a way of highlighting the situation we're in. It allows us to raise awareness, which is what we do, to raise awareness of the damage of Brexit, but the positive benefits that we could attain, you know, if we were back in the EU. So I think the petition is a great idea. And actually, let me say that we're very touched that you are working so hard, Andrea and Nina, working so hard in support of Scotland. It is really fantastic. And Sarah as well, it's fantastic to see the kind of support coming from communities in EU countries, and your awareness of what's happening in Scotland. It really helps us to know that there are people out there who do understand the situation we're in, which is a really difficult situation. So what I would like to say is that we are campaigning to raise awareness amongst Scottish folk about how we can get back into the EU, the need to get back into the EU, and how we can do it. Obviously, we need independence first, but we often focus on the EU, and there's still a lot of myths out there that we have to counter. You know, saying Scotland there'd be a veto, Scotland is too wee and too poor to join the EU, and so on and so on. There's so much misunderstanding out there, and we try to counter that. But at the same time, it's great that we feel we have a channel through Europe for Scotland, etc. We have a channel to help people in Europe understand as well, that the majority of Scots do want to be in the EU. You know, endless polls about that. And the rally that we had, the march and rally that we had in September when we partnered with Living Scotland, that was a massive demonstration of the Scots' desire to be in the EU. So it was a very well attended demo, and really I think that was the first and so far the only chance that the public, general public in Scotland have had to show their support for being in the EU. So as we go through, you know, into 2024, I think the EU elections and the prospect of enlargement and so on, these are things that we will raise awareness of. Because it will help us to push home the message that these are the benefits that we would have had if it hadn't been for the UK's stupid Brexit. These are the benefits we could have had, and we can have those benefits again. But we have to have independence, so that's the first thing. So obviously we're working on that as well, and it's good to see the poll that Olaf highlighted there, but we absolutely have to get up beyond 54%. And that takes a lot of work. But in fact, the commitment to be in the EU, the commitment from the SNP and the Greens, they are the part. We're non-aligned as a group, but obviously we support policies that are pro-independence and pro-EU. That commitment to joining the EU once we are independent is a key factor in drawing people over to vote yes, to support independence. So it is absolutely crucial for us now. And yes, sorry, I think I've gone on longer than I should have.
Wow, fantastic. Thanks so much, Morag. And I just want to say we are campaigning for Scotland, obviously. I was partly for personal reason. I was in Glasgow when the Brexit referendum happened. I spent 2 beautiful years in Scotland. So I feel like the democratic injustice, I feel like the predicament that Scotland is in. At the same time, as a campaign, we also think that Scotland rejoining the EU would be helping to change the EU in a good direction. So we are doing this also because we think that this process, this political process of Scotland rejoining as an independent country can bring about positive change for Europe as well. And this is a point that we always want to stress, and we can discuss a bit further. I know that there is a lot of comments and questions, and I want to come to some of them. But before I want to go to Lesley. Lesley, thank you so much for being here. As we were saying earlier, we met 2 weeks ago in this very inspiring conference, thinking through history, thinking through institutions, thinking through the crisis of the British regime, if you want, and what a contrast between that conference, that day, your reflection, and the political routine in Westminster that is so grim and silly.
Yeah, silly is the word, actually. I mean, you keep watching the amount of serious energy that's poured into analysing idiots, to be blunt. You know, I was at a fringe event in the SNP conference with some very serious, intelligent people trying to discuss what kind of constitution an independent Scotland would have. And I had to say, as an opening remark, and I said to them, please don't take this sort of in the wrong way as any sort of personal thing. We would take from Britain nothing. There is nothing. Not the voting system, not the sovereignty style, nothing. And when you really sort of begin to focus it that way, it's just the enormous amount of energy that goes into empty pomp and ceremony to keep alive this idea of being special. And how is Britain special? You know, in having voting systems that it shares in Europe, only with Belarus. But anyway, not to repeat that talk. I think one of the really important things about this, and I too, I'm just almost moved to tears actually sometimes by the amount of energy that you guys put into this. And when you mentioned coming to one of the events that Time for Scotland put on the, maybe it was the last anniversary of the Brexit in January, which was just the most appalling weather. And I still have this enduring memory of watching you and Nina waiting to go on, with Nina with I have to say, inappropriate shoes, hopping from foot to foot, trying to keep warm, which was just terrible. But the thing I think that we have to think about now in terms of Europe is Europe has got probably an imminent Dutch prime minister who is a nationalist. And the idea of what nationalism is very easily defined in terms of right-wing, exclusionary politicians who have got big issues with other, want to limit migration and basically seek a very kind of introverted state and want to kind of distinguish themselves. And that's what nationalism can so often seem to be to many Europeans. And sadly, because of where the Netherlands is at the moment, and there might be other national elections coming along, which bolsters this impression. As soon as you talk about nationalism, it can so easily seem to be that kind of right-wing, you know, we don't want anybody, no borders here, please. We just want this Scotland for Scots. And that's why you have to make an extra effort within Europe to explain the civic nationalism that is driving Scotland. And you can't stop that effort because we're, you know, clearly there are 100 other priorities that would occur to EU politicians, EU citizens, even the most intelligent, switched on, connected, open-minded person from any of the EU states will have a lot of other inputs to their awareness other than what is currently just a little corner of Britain. So it's up to us to keep making a bit of noise, as Nina put it, to kind of keep explaining this type of country we are, the kind of state we want to become, and the evidence that we have, as mentioned there by Andrea, our voting system, which nobody even bothered to think about, rather the criteria for the independence referendum, entirely about residency, not ethnic, like the Brexit referendum. And so little commented upon here in Scotland that people don't even notice what we did. But that was kind of an instinctive thing. If you've been here for 3 months, that'll do. So I think there's one good reason that we need to get out and lobby, because the context within Europe is constantly changing. One. The other context is enlargement. So Ukraine obviously is taking up huge amounts of people's concentration, but it has also created an animus towards the idea of enlargement. There's Moldova, there's other wee countries waiting as well. So the EU is actively thinking about that. Now, whilst they're actively thinking and all those countries are on the eastern side of Europe, we need somebody to keep reminding them there's another imminent, another country that wants to be a joiner, half or 54% of whose population want to be joiners without a campaign. If we don't make that point, then enlargement begins to feel entirely like an East European affair. And actually, we're still here. And not to try and have any arm wrestling competition with Ukraine at all. but we are already, the citizens here and our country is still compliant, just despite the best efforts of Westminster. We're still compliant with rules that we have followed for the last 40 years. We've been EU citizens for 40 years. We get it. We're in. We used to be members. We've still got the cards down the back of the sofa. So that's quite attractive. Finally, we would also be probably the only country to seek independence, possibly ever, to maintain its European identity. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, come on, that's not the main reason we're doing it. Well, everybody's got their own different reasons. But as someone who was brought up in Belfast, I see the different way that European identity sitting behind Ireland has been the motor, really, behind the prospects, which are still not immediate, but are there, of Irish reunification. And last year, for the first time, more Irish passports were issued in Belfast than British ones, which I must say, amongst the many things I never expected to see in my lifetime about Ireland, was a bit of a corker. Now, it's not just that people on the Shankill Road suddenly decide they want to have a green Irish passport, it's that they want to be European. Now, maybe it's clearer when you have a land border with an actual European state, but look at the kind of support that Ireland got from Europe through all that awful bullying behaviour, threatening behaviour from Britain, not in our name, by the way, towards Ireland, who suddenly lost their conduit to Europe and have now constructed so many actual port links with France and around England that they have essentially reconstructed their trade routes completely. So Scotland would love, I think, to have that kind of capacity, and we've already got the template for it sitting within the island of Ireland. So for all these reasons, we need to be active and busy on the European front. We are so lucky, you Scots watching this, and by that I mean the folk who've been here for 3 months and live here. We are so lucky that we have a set of people who, for whatever reason, think Scotland matters to Europe and to them, that they're willing to spend their times on a night like this to put these kind of events together, to keep maintaining a website, to keep pushing for the idea of Scotland as a European partner. That is gold dust, people, because it's so much effort. All you have to do as Scots is get off your bloomin' bahookies, get onto that website, Europe. Gosh, I'm going to give it wrong here, so I'm just going to hesitate. EuropeForScotland.com. EuropeForScotland.com. You'll find the petition to sign and get on with it. And as Sarah has already said, get 3 people to sign. Don't just, do it. Just please make the effort to spread this one virally, because there will be no part of the mainstream media that will even notice this, which is the final thing to say. Britain is so broken that actually it's now not just Scots who always wanted to stay in the European Union. It's 54% of British voters, which means people in England now have a regret that they left. Which political parties from Westminster represent that aspiration? Zilch. So we need to keep motoring, because, pretty much everybody can see the place to be is with your neighbours who respect your state, your independence, and your equality within a union, which sadly is something that we can see is not true within the UK.
Thank you so much, Lesley. Thank you so much for your eloquence and enthusiasm at all times. I want to bring in some of the questions that people have been asking. There is quite a few already, and some of them touch upon some of the themes you were mentioning. I think it's very important when you mention the democratic system of Scotland, because Scotland has a very solid and good democratic system that produces good democratic debates. Now, the first question is really about a democratic debate that is for Scots to have. When Sharon asks, mentioned the fact that there is a small percentage of independent supporters that would like Scotland to join EFTA rather than full EU membership. I just want to emphasize on this point that our campaign does not take a stance on this debate. We respect the choices that the Scots will take. But maybe this is a point that Morag would like to address. This is obviously a point of contention for some in the independence movement, and you are campaigning for EU membership. So what would you respond to Sharon on this?
Yes, some people do favour the route via EFTA and EEA. However, in Yes for EU, we see that as actually a far inferior way to go. It was worth considering. It was certainly worth considering EFTA and EEA. I think in the early days when Brexit was just happening and we were looking at possible options to get back into the European family somehow, one way or another, I think it was understandable then, and it was good that we looked at different options. But it's just become much clearer now. We've got much more information about processes of joining the EU. The EU itself has changed a lot in terms of enlargement and considering new applications. We know a lot more now about the possibility of getting an association agreement pretty quickly once we apply to join the EU, and that would bring certain benefits very quickly. So it just seems to be a little bit beside the point to try to promote EFTA. There's not enough information about that. I think it's not well understood. You would have joined the EE as well. I mean, the other thing is it's only about trade. It's only about trade. Whereas, of course, the EU project involves all sorts of, cultural exchanges, also different kinds of relationships. It's not just about trade. It's not a transactional thing. And of course, it's you don't get a seat at the table with EFTA EEA. You don't get representation in Europe. Whereas, if we're in the EU, we have MEPs, we have representation at the Commission. You're part of the policy making process. Making the big decisions that affect our lives. So I really think there's not much of a case for EFTA and EEA.
Thank you, Morag. Well, I think it's a debate worth having for Scots. In any case, Nina, I see that you want to come in on this.
Just one single sentence, really. I just wanted to say I don't see that as a negative, that there is debate in Scotland, that people have different views. I think it's a great thing and I admire how much discussion there is in Scotland, how much Scots know about all these different institutions and arrangements. Think about how uninformed the Brexit referendum was. People kind of woke up to the fact that Northern Ireland exists. So I feel this is a completely different situation, and it actually is something kind of also helpful for us, if you will, when we lobby, because we can say, look at what is happening in Scotland. All these very lively democratic debates are taking place. This is, not a country that is sort of like, wants to do something extremely radical and without really a lot of thinking. These are people that are serious about it.
Absolutely. And one thing to stress is that no matter whether you want to rejoin the EU or join EFTA, you still want to be part of the conversation that happens in Europe. So in both cases, sign our petition. We want to bring this conversation in Europe. Now we have Kenny Law that asks, what big event could be held in Europe to show on a grand scale how Scotland will be welcomed back into the EU? And as you said, improve the direction of the EU. Wow, big event. Now, on this, I want to say something very quickly. Wherever you are in Europe, if you want to come and help us and join the campaign, you can help us organize big events, because big events requires a lot of energy and a lot of resources. On this, I don't know. Olaf, when should we do a big event? How should we do it?
I think, look, the European elections are obviously coming up, and it's so important that Scotland is heard, because as Lesley alluded to earlier, I mean, it's likely to be quite a far-right spring in that election. We've obviously got the Dutch election result, which is horrifying to see. There are some countries where the far-right and the right have been defeated, like Poland, for example, my home country. But, generally, the far-right seems to be on the march in France, in Scandinavian countries. And actually, Scotland should be and could be that beacon of progressive values. So if you have Scotland showing that it's not just about us being back in the EU for our own benefit, but actually for our vision of Europe, right? We've got something to give and not just something to gain. And that can be a very powerful moment of solidarity. And especially when you have, minorities under attack, especially when you have linguistic and regional minorities under attack. You go backwards so many decades based on what some of these far right parties are offering. It's so important that Scotland is leading the way and showing that a different politics is possible, a different world is possible. And I mean, why don't we do a big rally in Brussels a couple of weeks before the EU elections with, our old Scottish MEPs who may not be in Parliament anymore, but are still that leading, shining voice of progressive values. I think obviously, we also need to do work here in Scotland. We're not going to be independent if we don't convince a sustained majority of people to get there, and we need progress on a referendum or a different process to get to independence. But yeah, we need to keep that solidarity going, and it's so important. And already Europe for Scotland are doing great work. So if you're in Europe, if you're watching this anywhere in Europe, whether it's a big city or a small city, get involved and set something up.
Well, just an idea, Olaf. Maybe we could have a joint event in Edinburgh and in Brussels with people talking as a bridge.
Let's do it.
We don't have time to discuss the details of this event, but we can test the water and see whether there is enthusiasm. We have another question from Bob, and then I want to ask each of you to have 30 seconds of goodbye, farewell, and say, before we close at 7. So Bob is asking if the presence of populist government across Europe and the possible rise of far-right MEPs reduce the chances of Scotland being welcomed back into the EU. Well, tough call. Nina, go for it.
Well, I mean, for instance, Gert Wilders, that was recently won a majority in the Netherlands. He is famously, he even favored leaving the EU for the Netherlands for a long time. He's not talking about that anymore. Neither is Marine Le Pen talking about it in France, because they don't have the support from their voters for that. I think there's 80% of people in the Netherlands support being in the EU. So I think ultimately, yes, politicians, of course, they have, they stand for certain things that they have on their platform, but at the same time, they also represent the people that elected them. And to that extent, I wouldn't feel as pessimistic as some other people might feel, because also the civil population, Scotland is really, I don't know a single person that has an issue with Scotland. I know a lot of people that are very fond of it, and I think Sarah can speak to that maybe a little bit more, because she's certainly traveled much more than I have.
Thank you so much. Sarah, I want to go to you and also tell us a bit about your farewell to the event.
Okay, I'll tell you about that in a second, but I just wanted to add on to the examples that Nina made, that also here in Italy, Giorgia Meloni, everybody was, freaking out that, oh my God, there's going to be Italexit and whatnot, and it's not even remotely on the agenda. It's just not, because the thing is, and this connects to the trip that you were mentioning, Nina. So some of you may know in 2022, for reasons of personal slight insanity, I guess, I decided to drive with my husband from Rome to Tbilisi in Georgia, and we went via obviously Italy, Slovenia, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, and Greece, and all of Turkey. But Turkey and Georgia are not in the EU, so they're not relevant for our purposes. And the point is, throughout this trip, I decided to, take it as an opportunity to spread the word about the Scottish cause and the injustice of Brexit. And it was just a social media campaign to just take a photo with the Euro-Scottish flag against a local landmark. And, it was a little bit awkward, obviously, to approach complete strangers with this big, scary flag in my hands. But I never had to ask twice. Literally every single time, the first people I asked were very happy to do this. Sometimes they didn't know. I want to say this. Sometimes they didn't know that there was such a difference, politically speaking, between Scotland and England, I want to say, maybe Wales as well, but let's say the rest of the UK. And when they learned about the different situation, then usually the reaction was outrage, followed by a great and overwhelming sense of support. But about Brexit in general, and this links back to what we were saying earlier about, maybe the even right-wing governments not being as much of a threat as they might have been in the past. I think Brexit actually was very good for that, because it showed how negative the consequences are of leaving the EU. And in general, the people feel perplexed about Brexit more than anything else. It's like giving up email to go back to flying pigeon, traveling, what do you call those pigeons that bring messages, like, it's just not a very smart move. So I don't think that's going to necessarily be too much of a problem.
Thank you, Sarah. I need to just ask a very quick goodbye to everyone, because we are past the hour. We want to be on time. So, Olaf, 20 seconds.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a big shout out to Robert Motyka, who just commented there on YouTube saying, "I'm Polish, living in Scotland. Scottish people are progressive and inspiring. That you would benefit from Scotland hugely." I think he hits the nail on the head. Scotland isn't just, a nation that's an island. Scotland is a set of values. Scotland is a set of ambitions and hope for Europe, and it's up to us to keep that light and to keep that hope. And I think it's so important that we don't just give in to the gloom that's surrounding us. Young people have a huge part to play. Europeans have a huge part to play, and we have to desperately get back into the EU, because every single day that we're out of the EU, we're paying the price. So enough's enough. Time to get back in.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Olaf. Mara, over to you.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear what Sarah was saying with our flag. That's fantastic. I wish it could be as adventurous as that. And I think you're right in saying that Brexit has served as a warning to other countries in Europe. Look at the mess it creates. It's not actually a good idea. Maybe the arrival of these right-wing extremists, which is very scary, maybe that will help alert people to the dangers. Maybe people have been just a bit complacent about the risk of creeping right-wing extremism. Anyway, I'll just show you. This is this. You may be familiar with this map. It's from the Eurobarometer. It basically says that every country that is a member of the EU, in every country, there is a majority of people who are happy with being in the EU. There's not a single country where it's not a majority that are happy with their experience in the EU. And I think that's quite persuasive. Yeah, anyway, thanks. That's been great. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Maraga. A final word from Lesley.
Yeah, well, just a couple of things. I was writing a piece for Political Quarterly recently, and there was only one thing that came back as something that needed to be fact-checked, and that was my assertion that the Spanish no longer have a veto on Scottish membership of the EU. This was questioned heavily by practically all their editors. So I just put back straight to them Reuters, which is pretty much the state of the art when it comes to, agency copy that you just accept. And they were astonished. These are kind of, political commentators that really think they are at the height of their game. And they had no idea that the Spanish have basically said, if there is a legal referendum, we don't have a problem. Now, of course, that puts us back into the pickle with the question of a referendum. But it's different than what they thought. They thought Spain just had a veto. So it's absolutely essential we keep going around and updating all of this, because these myths just sit for a very long time. So thanks to everybody who's helping to keep doing that. And the Scots, come on. Europe is not just like some luxury extra for people who are posh enough to get into schemes that you perhaps think you can't afford. All of our culture has been exchanged within Europe. I mean, I was sitting today in Dunfermline waiting because this damn car went to the Abbey. Robert the Bruce is buried in there. They have a reconstruction of his likely tomb because it seems to have been smashed in the 1800s. It was made with marble from Italy, with all sorts of materials from the continent. We were just interchangeable. It's only a piece of water. And our institutions, our legal system, so much of our outlook is in common with Europe. We just need to get with them, get with the Nordics while we're at it, most of whom are EU members, and get with the kind of crowd who support the kind of country we want to become.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Lesley. Thanks so much for all the guests that have joined us today. Thanks so much for those that have signed the petition while we were doing this event. There is 200 more. Thanks so much to all of you. If we couldn't answer all the questions, do email us info@euroforscotta.com Please sign the petition and let's keep this campaign growing and going. Happy St. Andrew's Day, everyone.
Nice one.
Thank you.